Yo, welcome to the show. It's David Johnny live.
It's kind of a long opening, don't you find?
What do you mean?
That entrance that we get before we come on, it's kind of long. Could be a bit snappier. No, something to work for in 2020.
You could be a bit snappier. Why don't you put it together?
Just critiquing. I mean, we're
Johnny
we're
North's
critics. Come on.
already starting the show off terribly as usual. What's going on, man? What is happening?
What are you talking about?
Oh man,
We're
what are
just
you doing?
trying to
Why are you
improve the
knock?
show, make the show
no,
better.
you're not supposed to knock the product. What are you talking about?
Oh, it's good. It's just could be a bit snappier, quicker.
You could be a bit
faster.
snappier, quicker, and faster.
Well, we both could have been, right? We're a bit late today, so.
Oh well, that's your fault.
How'd
You're
you get
very
to my-
slow to get into the studio, John. You were late today.
It's like slipping and sliding outside. It's
Slipping
terrible.
and sliding.
It's terrible outside. Take your time. Don't die.
Take your time. Do you say take your time or take your time?
Take your time.
Take your time. No? Undertaker time?
I guess you could take it like that. You took it like that.
Rest in peace. Can you make your eyes roll back like that?
No, I don't want to either.
I can do it. You see me do it?
Yeah, it's not good for you to do that.
What do you mean it's not good for you?
It's not
Doesn't
good for your
hurt.
eyes.
It's fine. I've been doing it since I first saw The Undertaker do it. I was like, yo, can I do that? And I was like, oh, I can. This is cool.
All right.
I like it. Evil. All right, Big Johnny. What do we got here on the show? Who is the wrestler of the decade? That's what we will determine here on the show. I asked you for a spoiler before the show because I could not wait. I wanted to know who your pick was, and your pick pissed me off. So let's get into it already, Big Johnny. Here are my nominees for Wrestler of the Decade. He is a multi-time WWE champion, a United States champion. He main evented 2 straight WrestleManias against The Rock in this decade. He is the face that runs the place. John Cena. John Cena, the champ. John Cena, one of my nominees for Wrestler of the Decade. Not Wrestler of the Decade for me, but when you take in 2010 to 2019, 2020, you can't help but notice the accomplishments of the great John Cena. I'd say he was in the feud of the decade and maybe the biggest box office match that we saw over the past 10 years, his 2 straight WrestleManias against The Rock. You can't talk about 2010 to 2020 in pro wrestling without mentioning John Cena versus The Rock. It was a big deal.
Right, but that's the beginning of the decade.
The
end of
first
decade,
5 years of the decade were John Cena's. The second
that,
5
yeah.
years of the decade were Roman Reigns and, to an extent, Seth Rollins. If you're talking about on top at WrestleMania, and that's why neither Seth, Roman, or Cena are my wrestler of the decade, because they were on top, but not for that long. They were on top. I mean, Cena was on top for a very long stretch, but over the past 10 years, it was only the first 5 years where he was really a top guy. His last match at WrestleMania was a couple years ago against Undertaker. He lost in under 3 minutes. His match before that was teaming with Nikki Bella against The Miz and Maurice. His match before that was against, I think, Bray Wyatt.
Oh, that was bad.
Before that, it was against Rusev. So
Bad too.
So the past 5 years of WrestleManias for John Cena have not been big time, but you look at what Roman Reigns has been doing the past 5 years, Triple H and Brock Lesnar and Undertaker and all these big matches, you can make a case for Roman Reigns being wrestler of the decade, but where was he the first 5 years? Like in 2010, Roman Reigns was nowhere. He wasn't anything. So Roman Reigns really came to prominence in the later half of the decade. That's why I think you could make a case for Roman, you could make a case for Cena, but because they didn't have the longevity over the past 10 years, they are not my wrestler of the decade. And Seth, he's just kind of like a backseat to Roman. He's like the Macho Man to Roman's Hulk Hogan. He's a big draw, he's a top guy, but he's not the top guy.
I'd argue that Cena's probably the wrestler of the 2000s, because I think that was his time. Was pretty much then.
From 2000 to 2010. That was his decade.
Yeah, that was his. And
Yeah.
That's it. He kind of trailed off in this decade.
Yeah. Daniel Bryan had a fantastic decade. He really rose to prominence in this decade, but he spent 4 years of the last 10 on the shelf in semi-retirement.
Well, the fact that he came back was a miracle in itself, right? So
The comeback, I think his match at WrestleMania 30, his match is, right? When he beat Triple H, that was incredible. But then when he won, when he beat Randy Orton and Batista in a triple threat, and he was the undisputed champion, and he stood there, that was the best WrestleMania main event over the past 10 years. I think his matches, they might have been my favorite matches at that WrestleMania over the past 10 years, and that was my favorite moment over the past 10 years. So Bryan is definitely in consideration because that WrestleMania 30 was so magical. That was my favorite WrestleMania over the past 10 years as well. Like, there's nothing really better than WrestleMania 30 that they've done in an entire decade, which is saying something, and it says a lot about the performer that Daniel Bryan is. I think he's the best wrestler in the world today. I think he's been the best wrestler the entire time he's been active, but those 4 years of inactivity during this decade, I think, remove him from the conversation for my wrestler of the decade, unfortunately, because, he's my favorite wrestler. I love Daniel Bryan, but I'm disqualifying him from this conversation. He's in the conversation, but he's not my wrestler of the decade.
it's funny because WrestleMania 30 was my second choice for best pay-per-view of the decade.
That's my favorite pay-per-view.
That's my second. It was very close, but that John Cena Bray Wyatt match really hurt it.
Yeah.
Where the other pay-per-view was pretty much solid, top to bottom.
I think that Daniel Bryan Triple H match was maybe Triple H's last great classic match.
Possibly. I feel like his Seth Rollins match was okay. It wasn't bad.
Wasn't a classic.
Well, it was a typical Triple H match, though.
Yeah.
So.
But the one with Daniel Bryan was something else.
Well, that's something you wouldn't expect because you don't expect Triple H to throw dragon suplexes and tiger suplexes. So that was kind of Triple H, not a classic Triple H match by far, but it was a good thing, actually, that happened.
I'd say it's his best match in the last 10 years. I think it was Triple H's best match of the decade.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I didn't really look at Triple H's work really that much.
Yeah.
So
yeah, when you're talking about wrestler of the decade, I wouldn't really count Triple H in there. Over in Japan, Kazuchika Okada had a pretty incredible decade. He became the number one guy in New Japan, multi-time IWGP champion. But I think the wrestler of the decade for New Japan would have to be Hiroshi Tanahashi. The guy main evented 7 of 10 Wrestle Kingdoms this decade.
Wow.
7 of 10 Tokyo Dome shows.
Yeah, but didn't Okada usually get match of the year all the time, though?
Yeah, Okada got match of the year a lot, but Okada really, he's another guy, kind of like Roman, where it's really been the past 5 years for Okada. The first 5 years of the decade, he was in TNA.
Because to spoil it, the match of the decade for me is Okada versus Omega 4.
Yeah.
That's the best match I've seen this decade.
That's one of the greatest matches of all time. I would agree with you 100%.
So, that's why I think Okada should be up there. I didn't see enough Okada work, though, to say.
Oh, yeah. Okada's up there. You got to talk about, when you talk about the New Japan guys as far as wrestler of the decade, I'd say it's Hiroshi Tanahashi and Kazuchika Okada. Tanahashi really carried the ball until he was able to pass it to Okada, and now Okada is the man. And, I just said Daniel Bryan is the best wrestler in the world, but Kazuchika Okada makes you rethink everything. Kazuchika Okada is one of those guys where it's you watch him work, and you're like, oh, yeah, no, he's the best. You see one of those, the match that he's going to have against Kota Ibushi on January 4th is going to remind the wrestling world why Okada is the number one guy in the IWGP Heavyweight Champion. He may not retain that title, but you're going to remember, oh, yeah, Okada. Let's not forget about Okada. Okada is the man.
Well, it's tough you say that because Jericho's wrestling Tanahashi, and I feel like that could steal the show. So it's very interesting what's going to happen. But,
on the 5th, though.
Right. So that's
Jericho's wrestling Tanahashi the next night.
It's all next year, too, so this doesn't count for this decade.
Well, Johnny North, you mentioned his name, and that brings me to my wrestler of the decade. Le Champion, the Ayatollah of rock and rolla. A little bit A little bit of the bubbly. The
Wow.
AEW champion, Chris Jericho. He started the decade as WWE World Heavyweight Champion, beating Edge at WrestleMania. He had WrestleMania matches against CM Punk, AJ Styles, and Kevin Owens. He wrestled in Japan against Tetsuya Naito, Kazuchika Okada, and Kenny Omega. He's about to begin the new decade against another candidate for Wrestler of the Decade, Hiroshi Tanahashi. He was Intercontinental Champion, United States Champion, WWE Champion, Tag Team Champion, IWGP Intercontinental Champion, and the first ever AEW Champion. He created The List. He created the Inner Circle. He created the Light Up Jacket. He created the Festival of Friendship, the whole Kevin Owens Jericho run, the current run in AEW. Without Jericho, would AEW be in the position that it's in right now? Chris Jericho is my wrestler of the decade. He has been consistently a top-level entertainer, wrestling tremendous matches, cutting some of the greatest promos of his career. If this isn't Jericho's decade, from the age of 39 to 49, I don't know what is. I think Chris Jericho is the number one guy still in professional wrestling, still the top draw, still the top promo, and he's nearly 50, and the past 10 years have been incredible for Chris Jericho. Le Champion. I salute you, Jericho. My wrestler of the decade. The number one guy, without a doubt.
That's pretty good. I had him like as entertainer of the year. Definitely best promo guy. Definitely, besides CM Punk, I think he got the best promos this decade without question. But for wrestler of the decade, I actually had Brock Lesnar, because Brock Lesnar kind of changed the game, and he still is the man as the decade ended.
Who's a better champion right now? Who is your favorite champion in professional wrestling? Is it Brock or is it Le Champion?
Personally, I like Chris Jericho, but Brock is a bigger draw, though. He's a far bigger draw.
People don't like him.
Yeah, but people talk about his matches. He's on the biggest
If you
shows.
wrestle a dozen matches in a decade, how could you be wrestler of the decade?
But he's on the biggest matches, the biggest stage. He makes the most money of all the guys. He's the man.
Well, I disagree.
Oh, of course you're going to disagree. He said Jericho.
I said Jericho.
And that's a good choice. It's just a different way.
Look at the accolades, though. Look at the different companies that he's been in. I mean, he's elevated the entire wrestling business. Brock Lesnar hasn't done much for the wrestling business.
He ended the streak of The Undertaker in this decade. That was huge. That was the moment of the decade, in my opinion.
And that was a pretty massive moment. The streak ending was pretty big. But
And then Suplex City, when he came out with that and destroyed and squashed John Cena, that was another great moment.
I mean, he was definitely dominant in this decade, was a top guy, remains a top guy in the WWE.
Won the UFC title, too, in this decade.
Won the UFC title.
I mean, and then they started making, like, the UFC is, like, legitimate in WWE. Kind of brought in Ronda Rousey because of Brock Lesnar. Look, Brock was successful. Let's try Ronda.
Well, I'm seeing on the chat here, Elite Wrestling Fan says his wrestler of the decade is Daniel Bryan or Kenny Omega. Disagrees with Brock Lesnar. Wally Byrne, my main man, he says let's raise a little bit of the bubbly to Chris Jericho. He agrees with me. Also, wrestler of the decade. All his sayings that even people don't watch wrestling, quote, incredible matches in Japan.
We can't get a bit of the bubbly here, though. Apparently.
No, we can't get a little bit of the bubbly in Canada, unfortunately. Come on, Jericho, you're Canadian. You're from Winnipeg.
It's weird it doesn't work here. It's odd.
Yeah. So I like that Wally, my main man, he agrees with me, Johnny. Shout out to Wally. Yeah, Jericho's a great pick.
I just find he wasn't used very well in WWE, though. That's the problem. Where Brock was always used well.
Look at what he did still despite the booking with WWE. World Heavyweight Champion, beat Edge at the beginning of the decade at WrestleMania to retain his title. Wrestled CM Punk, wrestled AJ Styles, beat AJ Styles at WrestleMania in AJ Styles' first WrestleMania match, and that match was incredible.
It was good. But still,
you're rethinking. I see it on your face, John. You're like, you know what? I think he's right. I think Jericho is the wrestler of the decade.
Well, no, I mean, you look at Brock's accomplishments compared to Jericho's. I mean, Brock still was a lot more than Jericho's, though.
Jericho elevated New Japan. He got so many people to buy into New Japan World, including myself. Many people bought New Japan World just because Chris Jericho went over to New Japan. People bought that streaming service in droves to see Chris Jericho versus Kenny Omega. You know?
Apparently we just made the lexicon, apparently.
No, well, that's what happens when you don't bring the bubbly into Canada. Yeah. The lexicon of Jericho. He continues to evolve. He goes to New Japan, makes that company bigger. He goes to AEW, makes that company a company. Really. He's the centerpiece of that company.
He made it more legitimate.
He makes it legit.
It would still exist if he wasn't there, but I mean, he makes it more of a serious contender, without question. Him, Jim Ross as well.
Of course.
John Moxley as well, too.
Sure, but Jericho is really the main guy. He's le champion.
No, he is. And
Jericho.
He's a very good pick. I still feel good about Brock, though.
Incredible matches. The run with Kevin Owens, like, Brock Lesnar has not entertained me to the level that Chris Jericho entertained me in just the promos with Kevin Owens.
We're going to question now.
Well, we're not going to agree here, John. You want to just move on?
Well, let's answer this question.
You want to answer questions now? You're just jumping ahead here?
Sure.
What's the question?
Who's the underdog of the decade?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's pretty tough. I mean, just off the...
So why'd you want to answer the question if you don't have an answer for it? What's the matter with you?
You don't have an answer? Why don't you have an answer?
Well, you don't have an answer. Underdog of the decade? I don't know. Daniel Bryan, because he, was booked to be nothing, and then he became a champion, and now he's a main eventer. So underdog to, I don't know. Dustin Rhodes. Dustin Rhodes is a guy who's, underused, kind of looked at as too old, too whatever, and look at him. He's still wrestling. He's still doing it. He's a good underdog story.
What about AJ Styles? I mean,
AJ Styles, man, the fact that he became a WWE superstar in this decade, something that people never thought he would become. Like, he's a bona fide WWE superstar.
And not just superstar, like multiple-time WWE champion. That's huge. The fact that he pulled that off, no one thought he'd be, like, A, a superstar, and then B, WWE champion more than once. That's amazing. I think AJ Styles is underdog of the decade.
AJ Styles was in consideration for wrestler of the decade. You look at his accomplishments. Incredible. IWGP heavyweight champion. Very similar to Chris Jericho. He started in Impact Wrestling, then he went to New Japan, became a top guy there, did something Jericho couldn't do, and that's become the heavyweight champ in New Japan.
Yeah, he also joined the Bullet Club. It kind of helped him a lot, though.
Yeah, well, sure, but, still.
Jericho did his own kind of Bullet Club thing, didn't he? Or... He had a T-shirt for it, like Jericho Club.
You gonna watch Wrestle Kingdom? You gonna watch Jericho and Tanahashi? Tana said if he beats Jericho, he's going to challenge for the AEW title, which has me very excited.
Yeah, but I heard he just re-signed with New Japan, so.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean maybe there's a little bit of talent exchange on the horizon.
I wouldn't get my hopes up.
That would be massive for both companies. It would be really good for both companies if they did some sort of talent exchange. Kenny Omega showing up at Wrestle Kingdom would be huge.
Yeah, it'd be great, but
huge.
I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, he kind of said he moved on, didn't he?
I don't know, man. People say things. Did you see Being the Elite this week?
I did see Being the Elite. It was actually really good this week.
Did you see Kenny wearing the New Japan shorts?
Yeah, they didn't want to show it, though.
No, well, they didn't want to show it, but they edit the show, John. It's not a live show. They're like, oh, we don't want to show Kenny's shorts because people are going to think we're doing a talent exchange with New Japan, and we're not doing that. Oh, there's Tony Khan. Ha, 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 ha. They still put it on the show, though, John. Why did they put it on the show?
Yeah, but they admit it, though.
They're teasing something.
Oh, I don't know if they're teasing anything.
I'm hoping.
They're just doing stuff.
I'm hoping. Because New Japan, AEW, they kind of need each other. Tanahashi showing up in AEW would be mind-blowing.
Yeah, of course. Okada, all of them.
Okada? Woo.
Naito? Yeah, sure. Be great.
Oh. A Los Ingobernable invasion? And it's good, too, to cycle guys in and out. Like, there are some guys in New Japan that just kind of, they run there for so long. And, like Tanahashi, you know, like, what's Tanahashi going to do? Keep wrestling Okada?
Yeah,
you know,
that's
like,
another thing. You're right.
Where does he go? He's still good. He's still a talented wrestler. He's still very effective. But, like, what's he going to do in New Japan? Is he going to start, you know, being at the beginning of the card? Is he going to start wrestling the young lions now, take Liger's place? Like, is that where Tanahashi's headed? Or could he still be, like, a top draw and go to an American company or AEW and, you know, do something there? Like, there's room for guys from New Japan to go on excursion. Even though you're not a young lion anymore, you can still go on excursion when you become kind of a older lion.
So we can continue with this other decade stuff, or?
Well, I only had Wrestler of the Decade planned, John. You have other things planned.
Yeah, so
you did a lot of research.
Women's Wrestler of the Decade, Charlotte. I think that was pretty easy. I mean, when you think about it overall. You talked about it last week.
Becky
remember?
Lynch has got to be in the discussion. So is Asuka, I think.
Yeah, but of the decade, though.
Yeah, Charlotte, I would say. You know, she's just become such a big star. I would agree with that. Charlotte would be the Women's Wrestler of the Decade. And in conversation for Wrestler of the Decade, too.
Right, you said
overall.
Bigger than Roman Reigns, so yeah.
Yeah, well, I think she's been more accepted as a top star than Roman Reigns has.
Debatable. Tag Team of the Decade? I think this is pretty easy. New Day?
New Day, of course. I mean, they were so big, one of their guys became a WWE champion, you know? That's when you know you're a big tag team, when you're so big that one of your guys becomes the champ, you know? And, of course, they had the longest run in the history of the WWE with tag team titles. They've held it, 5 or 6 times now? 7 times. New Day? I mean, who else could be Tag Team of the Decade? That's your cue, John.
Yeah.
Who?
I mean, the Usos come close, I suppose.
When I say Us, you say DUI.
That's mean. You're rough.
Well, okay. Not guilty, by the way. Not guilty.
So
somehow.
So moment, we already mentioned that. Brock Lesnar ending the streak.
Yeah, that was a good one, but for me, that wasn't really a feel-good moment, so my moment of the decade would be Daniel Bryan beating Batista and Randy at WrestleMania 30, standing there with the belts going yes, yes, yes with the belts. That's my moment of the decade. Well,
moment is more like what stood out, you know, like it's like it could be a shock too.
Well, no, that stood out more than anything. It didn't have to be a shock, it was my favorite moment. It was a moment, and I liked it more than the other moments, okay? Don't argue with me about my moment of the decade. If I want that to be my moment of the decade, that's my moment of the decade. In the words of the great Dave Batista, deal with it.
I guess I have to. So, promo, it's going to be the CM Punk pipe bomb. That was the best promo, I think, of the decade.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, we're on a disagreement there. That's nice.
Although, maybe that one he did in Florida with Heyman, when he just, like, starts burying the people and saying, like, you people are so dumb. I mean, you just cheer for anything I say. Like, I could just say, hey, I'm here in Tampa, and you'll cheer. I'm here in Tampa. And they start cheering. And he's like, see? He's like looking at Heyman like, what is wrong with this crowd? It was just like a funny Punk promo. It was one of my favorites in that run when he was WWE champion for like 400 days.
Okay.
But the pipe bomb was so iconic. So, yeah, I'd agree with that.
So, pay-per-view of the decade, I had Money in the Bank 2011, which is when Punk won the title, if you remember that one.
Okay. Let's pull that one up.
You also like who won Money in the Bank that year as well.
Daniel Bryan?
There you go.
It's hard to argue with Daniel Bryan winning Money in the Bank.
Well, you had 2 Money in the Banks as well in this one.
But my pay-per-view of the decade was Daniel Bryan winning the championship because there was 2 Daniel Bryan matches on the pay-per-view, and it ended with like the greatest moment of the past 10 years for me in pro wrestling.
Yeah, well, this had 2 Money in the Banks, and you had the CM Punk title match on that.
CM Punk beating John Cena for the title. Oh, was this in Chicago?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this was the Chicago one.
Right.
Oh, okay. Christian and Randy. One more match. Del Rio won a Money in the Bank. Alex Riley, Evan Bourne, Jack Swagger, Kofi Kingston, The Miz, R-Truth, and Rey Mysterio. Only Kofi, Miz, Truth, and Rey remain in the WWE in that match. Del Rio's getting beat up by Tito Ortiz. Evan Bourne is wrestling still out there. Jake Hager, of course, is in AEW, and Alex Riley is...
Apparently they might be making a comeback next year.
Alex Riley?
Yeah. There's rumors about that.
To what, WWE?
I'm not sure to what Fed exactly, but to come back to wrestling, period.
Oh, Mark Henry Big Show was on this card. Kelly beat Brie Bella.
In like 3 minutes.
5 minutes. Did you like that one?
Thank God it was short.
Daniel Bryan beat Cody Rhodes, Heath Slater, Justin Gabriel, Kane, Sin Cara, Sheamus, and Wade Barrett to win the SmackDown Money in the Bank. Cody, so Heath Slater and Daniel Bryan and Sheamus are the only guys that are still in WWE. Gabriel's not there. He's in like Ring of Honor and different places. Kane, of course, is a mayor now. Sin Cara just got released. Wade Barrett is, I don't know. He blocked me on Twitter. Go F yourself, Wade Barrett.
Wow, he blocked you? What happened?
I don't know. He's the only wrestler that's ever blocked me. I don't know why. This is years ago.
Oh, yeah, because you said something not too nice about him.
I may have said, like, oh, bad news is not good, and he blocked me on Twitter. I don't know. He's the only wrestler that's ever blocked me on Twitter. It's funny. So I have a grudge against Wade Barrett. Go F yourself, Wade Barrett.
The commentator now.
I really don't. I don't have a problem with Wade Barrett. He's fine.
But that was also when Sin Cara got injured in that match, remember?
Did he? Oh, yeah. Really bad injury, too, wasn't it?
Right, yeah. His shoulder, I think.
Yeah, it was a good match. It was a good pay-per-view. But my favorite of the decade was WrestleMania 30.
Well, Cena really hurt that one.
What else you got?
What else do I got? Well, I had 2019, like, of the year for...
We're going to do that on Wrestling Uncensored. Save it, brother. We could end this show right now.
Yeah.
We could end this show right now.
So that's of the decade, pretty much, yeah.
Tag Team of the Decade, The New Day. Women's Wrestler of the Decade, Charlotte Flair. Wrestler of the Decade, Chris Jericho. I know Johnny North says Brock Lesnar, but who cares? I'm saying Chris Jericho, and more people are agreeing with me. Wally's agreeing with me. Elite Wrestling Fan was down with it. I'm seeing Antoinette. She loves The New Day. Wally says worst match of the decade, Randy versus Bray in the House of Horrors match. Agree 100%. That was terrible.
I think there was worse matches than that. But
No, really? In
Yeah.
WWE?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Really?
Come on, that TLC match was pretty bad that we saw recently.
Which one?
The women's TLC that we saw, that was pretty bad.
No, the House of Horrors was worse.
I mean, that's what was supposed to happen. The TLC was not
Randy
supposed to.
looking at the doll head like, huh?
Exactly, but that's
That
all
was so dumb.
planned.
It was the worst. It was the worst. That match was the worst match of the decade. I agree, Wally. Me and Wally are always on the same wavelength, man.
Not always, but
My Irish brother, for the most part. You know,
if you say so.
we both love darts.
And then you differ in a lot of areas, but it's okay.
We both love darts and the bows, right? So I don't really
Sure.
love darts, but I love the bows. I'm a big bows supporter. I don't know from darts. What do you think?
Well, I think you try your best. And you did your best you could this decade. Good luck next decade.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
You've done good. You've done good. I mean, you created the show. It looks good. You created a great fan base. People are having fun.
Well, we created, John. That was a team effort, man.
Well, I guided you in the right direction. I told you, like, do this, do this.
This has been the decade of Wrestling Uncensored, I think, above all, right?
Yeah.
This decade was the birth of Wrestling Uncensored and Dave and Johnny Live, right?
Well, I mean, maybe rebirth or something, or like re-imaging of it. Because, I mean, it was, like, born before.
Was it?
Well, I mean,
when did Wrestling Uncensored start?
when you think about it, you were covering wrestling before Wrestling Uncensored.
Well, that was on Ringside Report.
Exactly.
Ringside Report's been around since 2006, right?
It just became its own little mutated brother afterwards, Wrestling
Yeah,
Uncensored.
Wrestling Uncensored kind of broke off. Ringside Report started as like a wrestling show.
Right.
And then when MMA got bigger and bigger, we're like, we're going to talk more about MMA. And then we didn't want to do MMA and pro wrestling, so we're like, let's just do a spin-off show called Wrestling Uncensored.
Right.
And then keep Ringside Report as the MMA show, and that's where we're at now. And then we're like, wait a second, we're doing a Wrestling Uncensored pre-show. Let's turn that show into another spin-off show and call it Dave and Johnny Live and do it live on YouTube every week.
That was all the ideas, that came together.
Yeah. All of these things have happened this decade, right? Well, when did Wrestling Uncensored start?
I think it was 2011.
All right, so Wrestling Uncensored was birthed in this decade. Dave and Johnny Live was birthed in this decade. The Ringside Report YouTube channel was birthed in this decade. Like the video, subscribe, click the bell, leave a comment, do all the things that you gotta do. Whoa. See, we zoomed in there. That was cool.
Yeah, it always like kind of zooms in, zooms out.
Zoom. Yeah. So all these things have happened, and we've made so many great friends. Of course, I'm seeing Wally and Antoinette on the chat. We've had the pleasure of meeting them this decade and becoming friends with them, and so many people around the world that we've met and become friends with because of these shows. It's very cool. Everything that's happened over the past 10 years. Imagine what the next 10 years will hold. I mean, we'll hit our 40s in the next 10 years, John. Both of us. We're going to be in our 40s. At the end of the next decade, John, we'll be in our 40s, man.
Yeah, I know. I didn't think I'd live that long. That's pretty crazy.
It's crazy how long we're living. Well, hopefully we'll live another 10 years.
I would hope so.
Right?
You have a son, so you better
Yeah. I'll live. I'll be all right. You'll be all right. Look at you. You're in tremendous shape. We'll be fine over the next 10 years. We'll just be older. Maybe
Right.
a little bit more sore from jiu-jitsu for me and weightlifting and wrestling for you. I think we'll be in more pain. That's what I'm seeing from my friends who are a little bit older. They're in more pain. When I see AJ walk up my stairs,
Really?
Oh yeah, AJ's.
Wow, you're shooting on AJ now.
I'm shooting on AJ. AJ's in pain. Freddie sometimes he seems like he's feeling more pain. Like it seems like as you get older, you start to feel more pain in your body if you're doing athletic things, which is understandable. But AJ and Fred are savages.
Well, yeah, they kind of push themselves too much.
They're beasts, man. They're doing jiu-jitsu all the time. They're monsters, So, wow.
What's up?
Just seeing all the comments here. Antoinette saying 40 is the new 30, and she's feeling no pain. So good for you, Antoinette. Feeling no pain.
I don't know if my arms grew that twice the size, as Wally said, but I mean, thanks.
Wally says your arms have grown twice the size in the past 10 years. They have become quite large. Like 10 years ago.
I was still pretty big, actually.
Were you?
Yeah.
Where were we 10 years ago? I guess you were still pretty big 10 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. It's been a while now.
You're
If
probably-
you want to go back 5 more years than that, yeah, sure. When you first met me, yeah, small. But
Yeah, when I first met you, you were skinny.
But you've known me 15.
When I first met Johnny North, he was not jacked at all. He was just this tall, gangly guy. It's crazy.
Right, but we've grown up since then.
Well,
so.
yeah. I know, but it's just funny. Like, I remember you when you weren't jacked, but you were a wrestler.
Right.
Like, you were a wrestler before you were
wrestlers
jacked.
nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. You look like one of the wrestlers nowadays. And now you
Exactly.
look like a wrestler from the 80s.
Now I'm obsolete.
Jizzacked. Obsolete. You must be deleted, John.
It's funny because when I went across the border and they were like, "Oh, you're a wrestler? You don't look like a wrestler. Like you look kind of small." Like,
Not anymore.
I'm like, "What are you talking about? Have you seen wrestlers these days?"
Wait, these days they said you look small?
They said like, "Yeah, you look small." Like,
Well, because when you wear a big jacket, John, it's really hard to tell how jacked you are. You wear clothes that hide how big you are.
I suppose. I don't know if I have to wear a big jacket. I mean, it kind of would show that maybe I'm big. But.
No. It's like hidden. You don't look that jacked when you're like wearing your hoodie and stuff. It's when you take the hoodie off and you got the T-shirt and you're like, or the tank top,
I guess you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Antoinette sees weed. Wally says weed became legal in this decade. Well, in our country, Wally, not out there in Ireland, or as AJ would call it, the UK. You know that Ireland's not in the UK, right?
It's close, but
I don't think AJ knows. Yeah, well, I'll tell you, Antoinette. I'll tell you what we got here. This is some Atlantis. This is nice here. This is some of my favorite stuff. This is called Rio Bravo. Super good. It's from Moncton. This is something new I've never had before. It's called Go by Tokyo Smoke. Go. Just called Go. It's a sativa, 19.3%. Pretty awesome. This is my favorite tasting herb right now, Chocolope. Very tasty. Chocolope. Really nice buzz. And what do we have here? This is Sweet Jersey 3, which is actually pretty nice. I had some a little bit ago. It's nice. Sweet Jersey 3. Antoinette wants to know what we have here on the table. We always have a little bit of the herb to go with a little bit of the bubbly, right?
She says she has Atlantis.
Oh, she has Atlantis. Yeah, it's good. It's pretty good. I went to a new SQDC location this week that I haven't been to before.
That's good?
Yeah, it was nice. It was a lot quieter than the one downtown. The one downtown is always super busy, like big lineups and stuff. But I went to the one on Queen Mary, and it was very quiet.
Okay.
It was nice.
Good.
It was a nice time. I like going there. I like that weed is legal now, and that I could go to a government-run store and buy some from the government. I still find it a little bit odd, but it's kind of nice. It's a fun concept.
Well, government's making money. You're smoking. Everyone wins. Right?
Everybody wins. Everybody wins. And Big Ben Deuce is on the chat. He says Big Ben versus Johnny. He's working some sort of angle. Okay, there are two people working angles on Twitter with you, John, and I'm not really sure what they are. One is Big Ben, who wants to wrestle you in some sort of match. He keeps challenging you on Twitter.
Okay.
Well, you've seen this.
I've seen him, but it's nice that he says that.
Yeah, and then there's another guy in the YouTube comments who wants to jump the rail at the house show this weekend. He wants you and him to jump the rail and find out what's in Eric Rowan's cage.
I think that's AJ.
Is it AJ?
I feel it's AJ.
AJ doesn't watch the product. He doesn't know about Eric Rowan in the cage. What's in Eric Rowan's cage? Is it a monkey?
I doubt on the house show it's anything.
Yeah. You're not going to the house show this weekend, right?
I am not.
They were in New York last night. They were at MSG. Rey Mysterio dropped the U.S. title to Andrade Cien Almas.
That's
just
nice.
Andrade now. SmackDown's in Detroit, Rock City tonight. Tomorrow, WWE is going to be in Toronto. I know our friend Antoinette is going to be there. Front row, I think, which is cool. And then Sunday, the WWE is going to be here in Montreal, or Laval. I know Johnny always corrects me. It's not Montreal, it's Laval. And I'm going to be at the WWE house show on Sunday, seeing some WWE here in my hometown. Well, not quite my hometown, because I live in Montreal, not Laval.
You never lived in Laval?
No.
That's good.
Why would I ever live in Laval?
Some people love it. Not me.
Well, you know where I've lived, John. I've
Well.
lived in NDG, Verdun, Villemart.
Right.
Those are the places I've lived in Montreal. That's about it. Yep, that's it.
It's good areas.
Good areas. Good areas. The western, southwestern part of Montreal is where I stay. All right? But not too far west. I'm not going to the West Island, okay? I'm not doing that. I want to go live in the suburbs. I like living in the city, you know?
It is nice out there sometimes, West
If I'm
Island.
going to live in the suburbs, I'm going to live way out in the country in the middle of nowhere where you never find me again.
Your retirement. Good to know.
Happy New Year's.
We'll see you in 10 years. However you are.
No, we'll see you in a week. But
No.
it'll be in the next decade, and it'll be in the next year, because this is our final show of 2019 and our final show of this decade. I cannot wait to hit the next decade where we finally have a name for the decade.
Yeah, because you didn't have a name
The
last.
20s.
Yeah.
The Roaring 20s.
Not the roaring, but whatever.
Get ready for the Roaring 20s. We're going to be swing dancing. There's going to be a depression. Everything's going to be crazy.
Yeah, that doesn't sound great at all, but thanks.
Well, that's what happened in the last 20s. I don't know. We'll see what happens in this 20s. The 20s, baby. Can't wait. All right. We love you all. Have a safe and happy new year. Don't do anything too crazy. Don't drink to excess where you're going to hurt yourself or people around you. Definitely don't drink and drive. Don't smoke and drive. Don't smoke too much. But, I mean, really, is there too much? I don't know. But let's say, take it easy, everybody. Don't go too crazy this New Year's. I know a lot of people go a little bananas. Take it easy.
Relax.
And have a happy New Year's. Have a good time. We love you all.
Don't party too hard.
Wow. Party harder than Johnny will party.
Yeah,
but don't party harder than I'm going to party. Okay? Do that. Just in the middle, right? Don't go more than what I'm doing, but go a little bit more than what Johnny's doing.
So, not as fast as you on the sled is what you're saying.
Oh, man. Did you see me on the sled? Follow me on Instagram, baby, at Dave Simon MMA. You can see me going down on the sled. I cannot wait to go sledding again. It is my favorite. It's my favorite thing. I got snow pants for Christmas. I'm hyped for sledding.
It looked very dangerous, but...
Did it?
Well, because it's just ice, right? Like, you're not, like, sledding on snow.
Yo, I'll show you my brother going down the big hill head first.
Crazy.
You want to see dangerous? I'll show you my brother. That was dangerous. I was going there. I was sitting on the thing. I'm feet first. I'm safe, and I'm going on the little hill. He's
Right.
going on this huge hill,
Terrible.
ice on his belly, face first. I'll show you the video when we're done the show. Maybe I'll put that on my Instagram too.
Yeah.
All right, at Dave Simon MMA. We love you all. Happy New Year's. Cool Runnings. Yes, I was like Cool Runnings. I love Cool Runnings. Wally, shout out to you. See, he knows the movies too. God bless. We love you.